Once upon a time, in a small coastal village nestled between towering cliffs and the endless expanse of the sea, lived a young woman named Alara. She was known for her radiant beauty, but it was her spirit that captivated those around her. She spent her days working in her family's bakery, where the scent of fresh bread mingled with the salty sea air. Alara's heart, however, longed for something more than the quiet life her village offered. One day, as she was collecting seashells along the shore, she noticed a stranger in the distance. His silhouette was framed by the setting sun, casting a golden glow around him. Intrigued, she walked closer, her curiosity piqued. The man turned, revealing a pair of deep green eyes that reflected the ocean's depth. He introduced himself as Kale, a traveler who had recently arrived in the village, seeking refuge from the storms that plagued his journey. Kale was different from anyone Alara had ever met. He spoke of distant lands, of mountains that touched the sky and forests so dense they seemed to hold secrets of their own. Alara was enthralled by his tales, and Kale, in turn, was captivated by her laughter and the way her eyes lit up when she smiled. Days turned into weeks, and Kale found himself returning to the shore each evening, hoping to catch a glimpse of Alara. They spent hours walking along the beach, talking about their dreams and fears. Alara discovered that Kale was not just a wanderer, he was searching for a place to call home. He had been adrift for so long, unsure of where he belonged. As their bond grew, so did their love. It was a love born from shared moments, from the way Kale would tuck a stray lock of hair behind Alara's ear, or how she would playfully tease him about his wild tales. The villagers began to notice the spark between them, whispering about the romance that was blossoming before their eyes. But not all was serene in their world. Kale knew his time in the village was limited. The sea called to him, as it always had, urging him to continue his journey. Alara, too, felt the weight of the inevitable. She could not imagine a life without Kale, yet she knew she could not leave her family and the village she had always known. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Kale took Alara's hand in his. He spoke of the love he had for her, a love that had grown stronger with each passing day. But he also spoke of the sea, of how it was a part of him, as much as she was. "I cannot stay, Alara," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "But neither can I leave you behind." Tears welled up in Alara's eyes, but she nodded, understanding the truth in his words. They stood there in silence, the waves lapping at their feet, as the world around them seemed to hold its breath. The next morning, as the village awoke, Alara made a decision. She could not bear to lose Kale, not after all they had shared. She packed a small bag, filled with memories of her life in the village, and walked to the shore where Kale waited. Without a word, she took his hand, and together they boarded the small boat that would carry them away from the village. The sea was calm as they sailed into the unknown, leaving behind the familiar for a life full of uncertainty. But they had each other, and that was enough. As the village faded into the distance, Kale looked at Alara and smiled. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alara squeezed his hand, her heart full of love and hope. "I'm sure," she replied, her voice steady. "As long as we're together, I have everything I need." And so, Alara and Kale set off on a new adventure, their love guiding them through uncharted waters. They knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but they were ready to face it, hand in hand, their hearts intertwined like the waves of the sea. In time, they would find their place in the world, a place they could call home. But until then, they had each other, and that was the greatest adventure of all.